Okay, so let's get into this. What is essentially happening when it comes to Social Security benefits and agreements between presidential options that come one after the other? And I'm going to go ahead and reshape this thing because when I first started the video, we were having internet connections. I've now gone back and looked at the internet speeds, and they're totally and completely fine. So sometimes when I talk about Supreme Court rulings, we do tend to see some internet problems pop up. Now, let's go through the basics real quick. What is this actual contract? So there's a contract between each president going all the way back to Roosevelt. And here are some of the provisions related to it. This is not the exhaustive list of provisions, but here are some of the provisions related to it. They agree to take your money without your choice. So this is called a tax. And it's not voluntary because you don't get to decide anything about it, right? You don't get to decide when they take the money from you. You don't get to decide how they take the money from you. Provision number one is they agree to take your money without your choice. Okay. It's just a theft for what's called a social net. That's what it is. Not necessarily bad theft, right? We allow it. We're part of it. We're okay with it, but it is a theft through taxation. The military is also a social net because they take our money to fund it to keep everybody protected, right? Similarly, Social Security benefits are its own little organized system of taking money from future generations to pay for current living recipients to have their retirement or disability benefits and any other program that has a payout option, right? So, bottom line is it's a tax. That's what it is. That's why they call it, and I know people get really offended when I say Social Security benefits are de facto a Ponzi scheme. I know people get offended, but look, if we don't attach the negativity to the phrase Ponzi scheme, and we just look at it as purely a legally defined thing, I think you'll be really surprised to find out that Social Security benefits are actually worse than what's considered to be a legally described under Black's Law Dictionary Ponzi scheme. Let me explain. Ponzi scheme, because, it's basically an organized system of allowing first investors to get money from future investors. Now let's look at Black's Law Dictionary as to how they define a Ponzi scheme as a fraudulent investment scheme in which money contributed by later investors generates artificially high dividends or returns for the original investors, whose example attracts even larger investments. Money from the new investors, the young people right now working, is used directly to repay or pay interest to earlier investors, the retired, the disabled, without any operation or revenue producing activity other than the continual raising of new funds. Now, you would say the Social Security Administration uses special interest bonds with the ultimate version of shitty return rates, right? Poor ROI would be too kind of a statement. So I don't know if you could use that argument. That wouldn't be a good argument. The difference is that a Ponzi scheme usually attracts future investors based on the fake success of the initial investors, right? So the Ponzi scheme usually attracts future investors based on the fake success of the initial investors, but the Social Security system is worse than that. Here's why. You don't even have the choice in the Social Security Ponzi scheme because they take the money whether you like it or not. You see, in a Ponzi scheme, traditionally, people choose to enter into it. And some people in Ponzi schemes do very well, and a lot of people do very poorly. But with the Social Security system Ponzi scheme version, you don't even get to have that choice. It's a government at literally the point of potential liberty infringement dictates via the Supreme Court that as a tax, you will be forced to lose a percentage of your money through payroll, meaning you don't even get to make the choice to be an investor in a failing system. They take by taxation. That's it, right? So to be fair, it's worse than the traditional Ponzi scheme, but you pay in a lot. And the people who paid in very little get the most benefit. So the poor get to be financially, kept alive, doing well, although from their perspective, it's not enough money at this point to even survive. So even the group in the Social Security Ponzi scheme system that gets the lion's share of what people paid in, which are the poor, the homeless, etc. They're unhappy because it's way too small, because America has essentially destroyed its US dollar in its capacity to buy things, groceries, fuel, etc., which means even the people who have an unnatural advantage in this system, basically the poor and the homeless, they get a lot of money compared to how much was paid in by the middle class who get effed over and the upper class who get really effed over. Now, some people will say, make the fair share situation happen where the rich have to pay their fair share. I say, cool. If you can make it happen, that would be awesome. Make them pay more taxes. Yes, they will move out of the country and the system will fail, but it will work for about 5 to 10 years. And also, to be fair, they'll just find ways of reintroducing what they're making into a different category of income so that it's not traditional income. But again, if you want to do it, do it. It's not going to last long. And the politicians, including the Democrats and Republicans, are never going to betray their billionaire donating class who pay for them to get elected to sit in the chairs. Now, understanding all this, okay, you pay in a lot. The poor get the most out of it, and the poor don't get enough to be able to survive. That's probably the best example of a failed Ponzi scheme at the early stages of it basically being thrown to the wolves, saying this is not good anymore, this is not working anymore. So when the Democrats say the Republicans are setting this thing up to just try and get us to privatize system, they're not wrong. The Republicans would much prefer a privatized system because the Republicans tend to fall into the categories of individuals who work companies, their employees, their employers, right? If they have a problem, they're part of a unit, a family, a group that will financially support the sick individual, that financially support future investments, etc. And what happened is the Republicans had that taken away from them because a lot of that extra money they made went into a program known as the Social Security Ponzi scheme, which, again, not all Ponzi schemes are evil or horrible or whatever. The bottom line is that this one has some negatives to it. Or like I said, you don't get to choose how much money they take from you, and you don't get to choose when they take the money from you. You don't get that. They get to choose that, which, of course, under the standards that we just covered, a traditional Ponzi scheme, new investors choose to be a part of it, even though they're frauded. However, to be very, very clear, in a traditional Ponzi scheme, the initial investors and the future investors, they chose to be part of it. You don't even have that right. You don't even have that right. That's why when people argue that Social Security isn't a Ponzi scheme, I'm like, well, if you're going to make that argument, you would have to make the argument that it is actually worse. It is actually worse than a Ponzi scheme. And not only that, it's worse because we have a system where the bend points are so aggressively for the poor and homeless that basically the middle class and the upper class are getting screwed over for the money they paid in because it's creating what's called a social net with significant push for the low income. Anybody disagree with me, go look up the Social Security Fairness Act. You're seeing, $6,000, $10,000 sent out to people who have dual pensions because of those bend points. Now, okay, let's go through some basic things here. They also agree in this contractual agreement to the next thing. They agree that the percentage of taxes, which is about a month and a half of each year's worth of a person's work for Social Security benefits, may need to be raised at their discretion. The politicians choose. Now, this whole model is going to fail because Americans now have the internet and are realizing that they work, every single year, about 2 to 5 months of a year for other people who they don't know, who they'll never meet, and will never feel happiness from or appreciation from. And now all of these Americans are seeing these other countries where they don't have to, these other citizens, pay these ridiculous taxes that are over their head, which makes younger Americans go, why the hell am I paying all these taxes? And they're like, well, I can't afford my student loans. I can't afford to get a mortgage. I can only rent. I'm in this shitty apartment. Why am I doing this? You know why? Because the billionaires got greedy. They pinched and pinched and pinched the working class to the point where the working class has given up on the government running anything. You want to know why Trump got in? It's because Americans, the middle, independents, and the right side Republicans no longer have faith in any of the original old school long-standing politicians because they have financially stripped American families of the ability to enjoy life. That's why. That's the reason. That's the end of it. That's what happened. Okay. That it is what happened. Right. I mean, he obviously also Trump was competing against Biden, who's having a mental issue, and then Harris, not a very talented person. So, it was, Martin O'Malley would have been a much better option for, the Democrats to put up as a comparison against Trump. That would have been a much better fight, a much better battle. They didn't get that. What we had was Harris, who can't give speeches, against Trump, who is like the king salesman of how to sell easily consumable ideas. He's also extremely good at getting out of sticky situations. I mean, I have thought many times they finally got him on this. Holy cow, he's never going to get out of that. Man, he is out of it within 2 weeks. Nobody even remembers what happened. He's been impeached more than, it's amazing. I don't even know. It doesn't make any sense. It's just, I can't believe it, Next provision. These presidents agree to promote that your money is safe. Why? Because they have to make you believe that what you're paying in is going to be there in the future. Currently, as the financial models show from the Social Security Administration's website, you got about 9-ish years before the retirement trust fund fails in its purpose and has to pay out less benefits. Now, technically, will it ever collapse? Well, it's all about how you define the word collapse. To me, collapse is when you pay into something and it can't pay you back what it promises to pay you. That, to me, is a collapse. But to some other people, if it pays $1 to every potential recipient and not $1 more, then at that point, it still has not collapsed. I think realistically, most Americans would say that at this point, the system collapse point is around the next 9 years from now. And when they have a 20 to 25% reduction in benefits to the retired people, that will mark a true collapsing point. That is the reality. Okay. Now, next promise that they make. They agree to promise that your benefits will not change. Now, Trump has violated this agreement with the other Republicans and with the Democrats because his changes, and they always change it. Democrats change Social Security left and right. Happens all the time. You got Social Security rulings. You got case law changes. You got policy updates. They change it all the time. The difference is people are okay with it because they're small enough to not piss them off enough. But with Trump is taking the cleaver, going full hatchet mode, and basically getting rid of this and this and this, and I mean, you got to understand when people are like, oh, he's just getting rid of fraud and waste. No. He's getting rid of base functions. He's getting rid of the things that benefits need in the form of services that you want to use. He is, because he's trying to make the government be able to afford itself. If he can pull it off, that would be, he would be on the level of George Washington if he could pull that off. He did that speech where he compared himself to be better than George Washington, and right off the bat, I was like, bro, give me a break. Yeah, right. But if he did do that, audited the United States federal government and still made it work, and he's going to have to use a lot of AI, but if he could pull that off, it would be George Washington level achievement. I don't believe he can do it. I truthfully don't. People are like, he's going to be able to pull it off. I think the only thing that is going to allow him to do as much as he is going to do is his ego. Because people who have an ego that's that big, they would rather give everything before they fail. I saw it in law school all the time. I was competing against people with huge egos. They were hard to beat because they would study all day, every day, Saturday, Sunday, didn't matter. They were working. They're tough to beat. Next contractual agreement that they have. They agree to fight opposition that want to change your benefits, including people in their own party and those opposing their party. They agree to do this battle, this dance back and forth about you're trying to cut benefits, you're trying to cut benefits, you're trying to cut benefits, and then actually not do anything about cutting benefits, about attacking each other and moving away, and attacking each other and moving away. Why? Because this makes people have a little bit of interest in the program, but not fully have enough interest to learn how it works on the inside, the little details. And then as a result, people realize both sides are flawed on Social Security benefits. And so they end up picking their party based off of something else, some other category that sells them on the ticket of being a Democrat or a Republican. Next contractual agreement. They agree to fight for the safety of your benefits into the future, usually citing a 75-year rule period as cited directly on the SSA website as to their long-term future assessment. 75 years, that's what they usually use. So the bottom line is this, okay? Yeah, I know, guys. I know that there's bots and anti-channel people in here who are literally paid to come live when I go live. It is what it is. We have a system set up. We're trying to get it better to remove the bots. Some of the competitor channels, basically, you'll see them pop up in here. They'll be like, oh, this channel is where you need to go. This is what you need to do. It is what it is. I can't get it fully fixed. We're bringing on new moderators, so it will be okay in the future, though. All right, with that said, they agree that over the next 75 years, they will find a way to make the benefits be there, healthy, and good to go. Obviously, how many of you have heard from the words of Biden when he was giving his speeches over his presidential career about Social Security benefits not being able to pay their full amount to retired people? Well, almost never. What about Trump? Do you hear Trump saying Social Security benefits will not be able to pay the full amount of retirement benefits that you are expecting, that you believe you are due? You won't hear it from them. You won't hear from them because their whole thing is a speech about the safety and how important it is and what's going on with the future of essentially Social Security benefits over a 75-year review period. You know why it's 75 years? Because most people live that long, and that's what they're looking at. Will it be there when I get old? Next agreement that they agree to promise you a golden year or golden period of retirement. The whole idea is that America is work hard, pay a bunch of taxes, earn as much as you can, get a house, have a good retirement. Nobody is living a great retirement anymore unless they are in the upper class spectrum. And to be even fair, I know some of them are even miserable too. A lot of them have anxiety and panic attacks, depression. And so as a result of that situation, okay, you have to understand that when it comes to the golden years, people do not feel like they've worked their entire life and now get to have a situation where they can enjoy their life into the future, where they get to have a situation where they have the time and money to go try out the hobbies that they want, see the films that they want, go see places, travel to Europe, etc., that they want. So the bottom line here is that, as a result of all of this, it's a tricky situation because people don't believe in the heaven theory, which is that you be a good person, you go to heaven. You work your whole life and pay taxes and be a good boy and a good girl for the United States federal government. And then once you reach 62 or 67 or 70 years old, you can go ahead and start having fun. Just doesn't work anymore. Next one, they agree to promise you that the money will be there when you need it and be able to see it in your account, that it will be distributed to you and you'll be able to use it on demand. Okay, so what happens when Trump cuts a lot of these, cuts 7,000 employees, gets rid of a bunch of offices, gets rid of the tech people that handle the backlog issues, and gets rid of the tech people that handle the issues with the computers and the servers? Errors, problems, they pop up. They become problematic. So as a result of that, right, as a result of that situation, you're going to be seeing that benefits are going to get suspended accidentally. You're going to see that they're going to have some computer problems and some people aren't getting paid. You're going to see that there's going to be known interruptions and unknown interruptions. Known, they send you a letter ahead of time. Unknown, nobody knows but you because you didn't get your check that month. You're going to be seeing that stuff. Another sign of the failing of these contractual agreements that these two politicians have together to keep the American people paying into this program. Okay. So with that said, the next one is they agree to promise you that basically, are likely to have a fix in the future. Democrats will promise you that they're going to tax the rich and the rich are magically going to make things better. Ain't going to happen. I would love it to happen. It ain't going to happen. Republicans are promising to, tighten things up, make the retirement age older, and then basically pay people less benefits through the cost of living adjustment and blah, 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 and a bunch of things that are very, very shitty, not enticing at all. Okay. Do I think some of those things will go through? I think some of those things will go through. I like the idea more of just taxing the rich. I love that idea. Put that shit on them. I love it. Is it going to happen? No, because the politicians that make the choices, that sign the thing that literally decides this, their signatures are paid for by the people who put them in the chairs to make the arguments for the American people when they're obviously not for the American people. Some people will argue Bernie, I've seen do the right thing sometimes. I've also seen him do the wrong thing sometimes. Now, next thing. The next thing is they agree to continue to pay things even though they can't afford their own debt. You will have noticed these politicians, both on the left and the right, say, hey, they can afford wars. Hey, they can afford putting bases in these other countries. Hey, they can afford to continue to pay your Social Security benefits so long as everything just keeps rocking and rolling. That is a lie. That is a lie. They can't. They can't. The weirdest thing is when I see people argue essentially that Social Security benefits don't cost the general public or the general taxes anything. They do. The administration of benefits, they do. The Supplemental Security Income Title 16 program, they do. Those come straight from general taxes. The interagency communication to purchase new hire query, the detailed earnings query, the summary earnings query, right? The certified earnings query, communicating with different DMVs and bank accounts and this and that. All of that costs the American people money outside of what they've paid in FICA taxes. Like, it just blows my mind that they don't know. And again, it is a talking point that politicians will say, and this is the agreement between presidents that, hey, it doesn't cost the American public anything. Doesn't cost the American public anything. Complete and total BS lie. There are many parts of the SSA, including an entire program with over 7 million people on it, that cost the American people money through the general taxes. Old age poverty individuals, disabled poverty individuals, entrants, refugees, asylum seekers, and those who are trafficked. Okay? Over 7 million people draw off of general taxes. So again, just understand that that's another thing politicians schmooze you up with. Okay? Another thing that the politicians are in cahoots with, both the Democrats and the Republicans, they agree to hurt younger generations before the retired, because the retired are important, or put another way, a massive voting bloc. If you get a room of 10 retired people and a room of 10 younger people, and you tell the 10 younger people that Social Security benefits are not going to be there in the same way for them as they were for older generations, that has less sting on the younger generation, because the younger generation was a little bit faster at not trusting the government to begin with. The older generation, who was fully reliant on the government, who paid in their entire life, hearing the government say, look, guys, we're going to have to screw you over for the young people. We're going to have you take a hit for those young people. They would become ravenous. Deep-seated hostility at levels never seen before. Remember, they don't have much to live. Like, they got time-wise, they can do things. They can do bad things, and they're okay with it. Next thing that they promise, they agree to work on issues that you are concerned about, such as the 800 number, where you try to call in and then magically it hangs up out of nowhere, and backlogs of applicants, right? where it takes a lot of time to be able to go ahead and get people on the phone, they agree that they're going to fix these things. Well, you tell me, they getting better? No, they're getting way worse. Backlog is growing. Wait time for Social Security 800 number, picking up and talking to you and be able to fix the issue. They're getting worse. These are what we call interruptions to benefit services. They are signs that the program is starting to collapse. That's what they are. Some of you will say, well, that's fear-mongering. No, what it is telling people the truth so that they start to change the direction of their life so that they have a plan for when things get worse. The people that say, well, that's fear-mongering, those are the people living in a bubble who fuck over the lives of people who need to actually start fixing the path that they're going to take going forward, because if they don't, they're going to actually be in a life-threatening situation. And you know what I've noticed about people who say it's fear-mongering? Those are not the people who work with the low income. Never worked with the low income in their life. Never worked with the homeless in their life. They don't understand what the low is. The low is you don't even have a tent, a tarp, a cot, and you are living in the woods. And to get food, the homeless food, right, the facility where it helps the homeless is at least 10 plus miles away, and you don't have a bike. You get what I'm saying? People sometimes have to go get the stuff for those people, and then those people have to give them something when they have nothing to get food from a homeless facility brought to them. Do you get what I'm saying? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe you're one of those people who just thinks it's all fear and oh my goodness, not. And that's my favorite part about the it's fear-mongering people. Like, if you live in such a nice bubble, why wouldn't you take the time to just look out and see where the low end and the high end are at? You already know where you're at. Why not look? If you are so good at making yourself so secure that you don't have to look out the bubble for anything, why wouldn't you, if you were smart enough to make yourself that secure, at least figure out what's going on? Why not? That's what a smart person would do. Next thing that these president after president, promised people, they agree to these things as two battling entities fighting for the chair, because a true bloodbath, a true full strip down of either side would be bad for business. The business of politics, keeping people happy enough to keep them okay with their current politician options, but not unhappy enough to believe the other side is the problem, or potentially the other side is something they might want to check out and switch to. Remember, politicians sell a product of you not switching to their competitor. That's something you have to keep in mind here. So anyone saying this consensual agreement between presidents doesn't sound like one Ponzi scheme, sly as a fox security manager trying to sell you that their program is is your ticket to a better future. Well, obviously that's exactly what these politicians are. Talented salespeople working for billionaires. From Trump to Biden to you name it, and especially AOC. AOC is really good at it. I've watched AOC's videos. She's got this, she's got that girl next door, beautiful. She's got it. When it comes to selling, let me tell you something about AOC. If she could sell cars, she would outsell a lot of people. Okay. That car lot would be empty. She would give the Wolf of Wall Street a run for his money. I really do believe that. When I watch AOC do what she does, I am impressed. That saleswoman can sell. Some of you love her, some of you hate her. But again, I'm watching the show with the TV clicker going between the red and the blue channels as an independent. I'm watching the whole spiel. I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that. It's an interesting story. So what happens if the presidents don't continue with this mutual agreement? That's what we're facing right now. What we're facing right now is Trump is breaking a lot of these agreements that traditionally are shared between the presidents. And both parties would have immediate chaos because neither party has a plausible fix, which means that when one party creates an imbalance by not following these contractual agreement terms, the other party is expected to step in and fix the issue, which neither party has an actual solution that can be had. It's weird when I talk to Republicans about it, and they're like, well, the youth, the young, they're just not going to have it like we have it. Well, how are the youth going to then take care of you? Well, they have to, because we paid in our whole life. Do they have to? And that's when the Republicans realize maybe their plan isn't so good. Then the Democrats, it's screaming. A lot of hair dye and screaming about how the rich have to pay their fair share. Just go to any big Democrat-oriented event. There will be a billionaire giving a speech. The billionaire is giving a speech because they paid for the event. Do you understand? Like, that's a problem. It's never going away. Like, when you say, hey, we need to tax billionaires, another 15 to 17% more to cover these social security problems for the poor. So, would a billionaire sign up for that? No. Billionaires spend millions to not lose hundreds of millions. Okay. This means if one party fails their obligation to keep with these provisions and the counterparty of the two-party system can't provide an adequate fix, then we have a problem. Then things start to spiral out of control and people start to see things that they're not supposed to see. Now, the uninitiated will say, oh, just tax the rich, raise the cap, and poof, a solution. And the other side will say, raise the retirement age, give people less through COLA, and slowly end government-backed benefits and put them into a private industry, right? And remember, there's really 3 levels of privatizing Social Security. There's, level 1, which is where they give you a privatized, I guess I would say this. Level 1 is really where they create a sovereign trust account, where the government starts taking on companies that make money, they buy them, and then they run them, and then they put that income into Social Security, right? A privatized method of raising money to help a program that needs assistance. Then next level up is where they give you an actual privatized right to your Social Security benefits, where if they try to change your benefits or lessen the amount that you're supposed to receive, you could sue them. You don't have that right now. A lot of people think they do. You don't have that right at all. And then, of course, the highest version is where they end Social Security and say, look, we're giving everybody their money back, right? We're putting out $8 trillion, $10 trillion, $15 trillion. We're taking on the debt. And we're just paying everybody back. And everybody can have their money and they can do whatever they want with it, right? The first thing you're going to see is that the homeless and the low income are going to basically have absolutely no plan for their future, absolutely no plan for what's going to happen with them when they're unable to work. That's the first thing you're going to see, right? It's the low income and the homeless that are going to have the worst problems. Because, right, you don't really need to take care of the rich, the wealthy, the upper income. The middle class, they're struggling now because of mismanagement with the government, but the middle class used to be fine. So here's the deal. Now, if you study Social Security benefits, and I don't mean it at necessarily my level, I own a law firm in the field. I'm the most viewed, clicked on. I'm the most subscribed to disability attorney in America, but I mean like other people, right? Who look at it as almost like a hobby, whereas I have it differently. Like, I work in the field, and then my hobby is YouTube with reporting on Social Security benefit changes, which is a very unhealthy relationship with Social Security. When your job and your hobby are the same thing, very unhealthy situation. People with kids, people with spouses cannot do what I do. They can't come close. They don't have the time. So here's kind of the basic thing. What I'm talking about are people who research and talk about Social Security inside the rule book. So maybe 1% of 1% of the people watching this video are those who get how this program actually works and how it purposely is groomed within these contract provisions between the politicians that have to go ahead and walk them down the aisle. And, if you're one of those people saying Social Security doesn't cost America anything, right? We've already gone through that. You know that it does. Right? It costs people through the different programs, SSI benefits being the major one. At the end of the day, I'm going to try to basically get to the level of a person in this video so that they can understand how to take their knowledge from here and put it up to here. We're going to go through the Supreme Court rulings. We're going to go through the presidents involved. We're going to go through that so that you understand how it got to this point. Okay. Now, if any of you think that I'm talking down to you, I don't intend to. But if we just take one step back, would you call yourself a doctorate level student of Social Security? Like, do you read case law on the weekends? At some point, do you just need to be, blatantly obvious with yourself about like you're standing with it, like where you're at with it? I mean, some people, they come to me and they're like, well, I know everything about Social Security. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, okay, well, either this is somebody I should already know about, or they've been really good at doing absolutely nothing with their knowledge, right? So here's kind of the bottom line, okay? My questions to you are, since FICA taxes were never meant to be the only form of support for retirement, it wasn't meant to be the only thing, then why are retirement benefits turning into the only form of support in retirement? Future generations can't afford stocks, houses, bonds. They can't even afford the student loans. So if pensions are almost exterminated at this point, and there's no savings of anything, then why aren't Social Security benefits being modified to be the one-prong fix to retirement? No one is asking that question. If politicians could clearly see that the other two prongs were going to disappear when they didn't actually, yeah, and that's the thing. Like when you look at politicians, how many of you, and let me ask you this one, this is a good question. How many of you have ever thought, why did that politician not see this coming? Bernie's one of them. He is. Trump is one of them. He is. Why didn't they see it coming? And if they were so brilliant, why didn't they switch it over so that instead of a three-prong system, we had a one-prong system, and retirement benefits were that one prong? They're so brilliant. Why didn't they figure that out? I mean, it should be easy for business owners. They have to foresee what the marketplace is going to be like and fix the products and services that they're going to provide based off of what the marketplace is going to do. Should be easy for people of that talent level. No one's asking that question. If the politicians could clearly see that the other two prongs were going to disappear, then why didn't they start mass funding and mass modifying Social Security benefits? Well, the answer is that if they did do that, it would violate the mutual, consensual, bilateral, express Social Security contract between each president that has been rolled out, handshake after handshake, Oval Office after Oval Office, desk after desk. You can argue that this is wrong, but literally, this is what happened. So who were the presidents that basically were part of this? Okay, who were the presidents that actually continued this time after time after time? And by the way, super congratulations to Karen, who just paid off her student loans. Mine are just a little bit under 300,000, which is much lower than they were originally. So getting there. So Franklin D. Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, right? And then we got Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, and then Trump again. All these presidents up to Trump's second term have followed this mutual agreement between presidents. It's literally the end third of how many presidents we've had. Like if you look at the list of presidents, it's not that long. The last third, the most recent third, have been a part of this agreement. Now, I want to go through with you something that was written specifically by somebody incredibly important. I think it's super important that you hear this. All right. This is by Nicholas Mosvik. He's from, what was the group? It was the, I don't want to quote it wrong. Let me see if it's in here. The National Constitution Center. I don't read it to you so you understand exactly what's going on. It's about the 1937 Supreme Court decision that disability benefits would be a tax and not a privatized right, like what you have with your car, your house, or a guitar. Okay. All right. So let's go through it real quick. How the Supreme Court upheld Social Security, produced on May 24th, 2023 by Nicholas Mosvik. On May 24th, 1937, the Supreme Court decided in two separate but related cases that Social Security Act of 1935 was constitutional. In Stewart Machine Co. versus Davis and Halvering v. Davis, the court upheld, although Halvering v. Davis is the one to really remember, the court upheld the act as a proper use of the spending power. Okay. The court's March 1937 decision in West Coast Hotel versus Parrish upholding Washington's minimum wage statute has been most often connected to the switch in time, whereby the court's majority began upholding the New Deal legislation under threat of court packing from President Franklin Roosevelt. Remember, the New Deal stuff, they were not on board with this. It wasn't until this claim, the West Coast Hotel versus Parrish, that created this switch, that these New Deal, these changes that were massive, started to become very, very appetizing. Okay. Now, with that said, shortly after the decision came out, Stewart Machine Co. versus Davis and Helvering v. Davis saw the court continue to uphold broad national power, this time to tax employers to pay for benefits under the act and for Congress to use its spending power to push states to pass laws to fund unemployment compensation. So in other words, government had the power to say to the employers, hey, we know you pay these employees, but we are going to make you pay extra money every time you pay that employee on top of what you pay that employee to pay into this social net style program. That was a huge thing. Every inch we made away from little government to mega government, the big switch happened in basically West Coast Hotel versus Parish. So when did the switch from mega government happen? 1937 March. When did the switch for smaller government happen? Basically February 2025. Those are the 2 points. That's basically what's going on. I mean, I'm getting super texted right now. Hold on, let me just text this person. Okay, so with that said, all right. So we had these claims, right? So we had Stewart Machine Co. v. Davis and Helvering v. Davis, okay? And Stewart, an Alabama corporation, paid the tax required under the statute before filing a claim for refund with the Commissioner of Internal Revenue, claiming it could recover the payment because the statute was unconstitutional. So they paid the money so that they would have a damage, so that they could claim the statute was unconstitutional, so that they would have standing, because they were a damaged party that had to pay something that they felt was unconstitutional. It argued, okay? It argued the tax was not an excise. It was not uniform throughout the United States. Its exceptions were numerous and arbitrary in violation of the Fifth Amendment. Also, the corporation said the law's purpose was regulatory and not for revenue, and constituted an unlawful invasion to the reserve powers of the states. So they were saying, hey, look, you're taxing me money that you shouldn't be able to tax me on. The purpose of why you're taxing me is wrong. It's unconstitutional. You shouldn't have the strength to do this. Justice Benjamin Cardozo, who's written zillions of decisions, wrote the court's majority opinion, determining that the power of Congress to tax was as extensive as the plenary power of states to tax. Congress could tax not only state-created corporations, but also the transmission of property by inheritance under state law. The court decided the federal government, no different than states, could treat some businesses different from others for tax purposes, and any considerations of policy and practical conveniences would not be condemned by the court as arbitrary. Finally, Cardozo declared the act did not violate the 10th Amendment because under the act, the national government only induced states through the spending clause to pass laws regarding unemployment compensation. In other words, the Supreme Court ruled that they could pretty much tax you for almost anything in any situation. Very limited times would they not be able to go ahead and take from you related to the tax clause. Congress did not improperly coerce states, but acted during a crisis so extreme, the use of the monies of the nation to relieve the unemployed and their dependents in a use for any purpose narrower than the promotion of the general welfare. In other words, what they had to say was, we're going to tax the American people as a government. The Supreme Court is going to back it. And if you try to say that we can't tax you, then guess what? We're just going to have the court come out and say that we are. You can file suit. The Supreme Court decided the American people no longer have control of their money. The government has full control and taxation abilities under what they earn. Helvering focused on Title II of the Social Security Act, which authorized grants of money for old age benefits in order to assist states in the administration of their unemployment compensation laws, right? So we're talking about retirement benefits now in the Supreme Court case of Helvering. It was the product of a suit by a shareholder of the Edison Electric Illuminating Company, right? Sound familiar? Edison Light. asking for the company to be enjoined from making payments under the law because the taxes on the employer and the employees were unconstitutional, saying, hey, they don't want to pay FICA taxes because remember, employees and employers, they both pay a FICA tax. A lot of people don't realize that. They get the check and they're like, oh, this is what the company had to pay for me. No. The cost of an employee is the gross amount that the employee is to be paid. Of course, they take taxes out of that and you get a net. Plus the additional taxes an employer must pay because they employed that employee, plus the time it takes to manage that employee. Those are the three factors you use to decide if you can go ahead and hire somebody and keep somebody going forward. All right. So here's what happened. Again, Cardozo, who's written some of the most life-changing American decisions, ever. I mean, he just wrote so much. He's like in so many. When you study Supreme Court law, it's just his name just pops up all the time. Cardozo wrote the majority in a 7-2 decision. By the way, for those who don't know, there's minority opinions. Basically, majority opinion is where there's more people that decided that it was correct. They got on board. Sometimes they dissent in part or whole or whatever. But bottom line is, that's most of the Supreme Court justices came together in agreement on that. Okay. So he wrote the majority, so more people were on board with him than not. In the 7-2 decision upholding the Social Security Act as a proper use of the spending power for the general welfare, and in this case, Justice George Sutherland did not dissent. Cardozo said, Congress, quote, may spend money in aid of the general welfare. There have been great statesmen in our history who have stood for other views, Madison, Story, Hamilton. The line must still be drawn between one welfare and another, between particular and general. Where this shall be placed cannot be known through a formula in advance of the event. The discretion belongs to Congress, unless the choice is clearly wrong, a display of arbitrary power, not an exercise of judgment. Okay, there's a lot in there because Cardozo was brilliant. He was like, as a human specimen, the Einstein of essentially law. Okay, let me read it to you again, and I'm going to put it in simple, fun terms. Quote, Congress may spend money in aid of the general welfare. They can take a bunch of money from all the different classes of people that are working and mostly spend it on the poor and the homeless, okay? And quasi screw over the middle class and the upper class who paid in more. There have been great statesmen in our history who have stood for other views. Madison, Story, Hamilton, they didn't agree with this. They didn't think everybody should have to pay for everybody, right? It's hard to sell somebody on the idea that that person should work really hard and then 2 months, 1 month of their work that year should be spent on other people potentially. Maybe it could be half a month, a week of their year. But the bottom line is it's hard telling people you better work harder so that you can afford that person who didn't work as hard as you. It's a tough sell. It's a tough sell. The line must still be drawn between one welfare and another. Retirement, back then, they saw it as a form of welfare. They saw it as a form of helping essentially those who couldn't afford being elderly. Between particular and general, right? Specificity versus general overview. Where this shall be placed, where this shall be placed cannot be known through a formula in advance of the event. That sentence right there has effed over more of you than you realize. That is the sentence that did not do good by you. I'm going to read it again. Where this shall be placed cannot be known through a formula in advance of the event. That was the sentence. There were other things too, but that was the sentence that took your private right away from Social Security benefits. It took your private right away from them. The private right to sue the government if they weren't giving you your full amount of benefits. Because the Supreme Court Justice said, where this shall be placed cannot be known through a formula in advance of the event. Meaning, they're going to have to be able to change this program for retirement benefits as time goes on based on the needs of the people. And therefore, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future, we can't give a formula to be consistently used. And if we can't give a formula that's going to be consistently used, then we can't go ahead, very importantly, and give people a privatized right to their benefits. Because if the government can change their benefits to fit the modern version of what's going on, then you can't give a private right to those benefits, because then the American people could sue the government. If you get that from this video, that one thing alone, you know vastly more about Social Security benefits than the average American. Ron McMullen, wow, massive donation. Thank you for the $49.99 donation. He said, "D, the Trump administration respond to your Social Security fix?" No, they did not. I actually reached out and gave it to somebody who's very connected, and they did not respond. But I'm going to go ahead and send a letter specifically to somebody who's even a little bit higher up. And it's like a 40-point list of changes and fixes and modifications and things I could do. I'm gonna rewrite it to make it even better. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make it like a gift box where there's gonna be things that entice the person to actually want to be a part of it. So I'm gonna try and get it to somebody who wants to open it. But it is not the aid, it is the specific politician this time around. All right, with that said, the discretion belongs to Congress. So he's saying the right of Congress to not give you your full benefits is within their discretion. They get to make the choice. Unless the choice is clearly wrong. Well, who's going to be the arbiter of what's wrong? The court system is going to be the arbiter of what's wrong. So the court system gave themselves the power to decide if Social Security benefits and the taxes that occur are proper. Nothing like being the king, right? The judge, right? The deciding factor. Nothing like being the prosecutor, and nothing like having every hat on your head as the Supreme Court. All right. So discretion belongs to Congress unless the choice is clearly wrong, a display of arbitrary power, not an exercise of judgment. So the question becomes, when has the government abused their power so that it was used in an arbitrary display? Versus when was it an exercise of judgment that was for the general welfare of people? Now, remember, when it comes to Social Security benefits, middle class people are pretty poor right now. So middle class, lower end, the low income, and the homeless are getting the bennies of Social Security benefits. But all the people in the middle class upper, and anybody above that don't do well. Like, they don't get more of the money obviously gets massively filtered to the poor side. And a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people are like, why am I getting such little money? It's because it's a social net. The social net F's over the middle class and the upper class. It moves a bunch of that money to the lower end, right? That's the reality. That's how it works. That's the point of it, which isn't such a bad thing. It is a version of socialism, but not all socialism is bad. But let me ask you this. If you hate the idea of you giving some money every single year over to the poor, then would you not hate the idea more of a lot of poor being homeless and stealing from your house? And would you hate that more? Would you hate it more having entire masses of people not being able to survive an apartment? Having to go on supplemental security income benefits as somebody receiving direct tax money that you paid? I mean, that to me would be, I don't know, like that would be worse. Like, you want more people to earn their way, even if they're poor. You want more people to climb that ladder to pay more into the system. That's what you want. That's the direction you should go. You don't want more people on SSI. SSI is the catch-all program. When shit hits the fan, you go on SSI. Cardozo made heavy use of the evidence presented by Congress in favor of the legislation. The President's Committee on Economic Security had conducted an investigation and issued a report finding that in 1930, 71 out of 224 factories had fixed maximum hiring age limits, with the majority under 46. The court would not judge the wisdom of the scheme Congress had chosen to deal with the national crisis when states were unwilling or unable to act. Now, some of you guys know, some of you women, some of you men know that companies have a bias against older people. There is an elderly bias. There is an ism against the elderly working. Now, to some degree, that's also changing, with computer work and stuff like that. Hiring older people, frankly, they got all the skills, they got the knowledge, they got the experience. you get them up on the computer and how to work it. I mean, you got somebody who knows how to do business. So now the elderly are starting to have this little mini spot of an advantage over other people. But back then, factories, they didn't want people over a certain age. They didn't want that. The factories would specifically make sure that they didn't hire anybody over a certain age. The court therefore decided that the old age benefit scheme of Title II, that's retirement, and the Title VII tax on employees did not violate the 10th Amendment, once again invoking the Great Depression. Cardozo noted that the purge of nationwide calamity that began in 1929 had taught us many lessons. Not the least is the solidarity of interests that may once have seemed to be divided. Unemployment spreads from state to state, and the hinterland now settled that in pioneer days gave an avenue of escape. All right, what they're saying here is that the Great Depression taught us, and there's something that he could have included here, which would have been better. He should have included a sentence about credit as well, but again, it wasn't directly on point, but it would have been helpful for this video. The ability of Americans to have a lifetime system that they get to participate in as a citizen of a country. They're born, they learn how to do things, they get more education, they get a job, they work the job until they can't work as much anymore, and then they have retirement, and retirement catches them and holds them for the general welfare of them. In that situation, having a timeline of the use of a human being throughout its entire spectrum is part of the general welfare of this country's citizens. And we learned from the Great Depression, the shit show of America, right? We learned that if Americans, right, don't have the opportunity to afford food, pull credit to get houses, buy a car, right? If we learn that Americans don't have this timeline characteristic of a place to live their life, putting one foot in front of the next and one foot in front of the next, they don't have that. And the rich get a little bit too involved, the billionaires get a little bit too involved, then we have a financial collapse. And that's what happened. The court, reflecting upon a crisis which fundamentally changed society, because remember, 1929, Great Depression, that's like right before 1935, all this New Deal, specifically retirement passed, 1937 Supreme Court decision. So we're all within a 10-year period of important events. The court reflected upon a crisis which fundamentally changed society, openly considered in both these cases how the Great Depression may well have also changed the Constitution and the power of Congress to spend to aid the general welfare of the American people. More recent cases have made clear the extent of Congress's spending power. Now, real quick, it was the light switch in 1937 for Congress to start saying, you know what? If we don't have these employers help us and create a better life for people, a purpose, a one foot in front of the next situation, then we will have another collapsed economy. Then we will have another massive problem where we go into a depression. Star Fury did a $5 donation. Let me put a little heart on there. If you only knew how deep this SSA darkness goes, especially the way they treat us SSA workers. So I actually do not talk about, and Star Fury is very, very correct on this. I actually don't talk about the abuse of the managers to basically the staff members that are training, or what happens when an SSA beneficiary goes, and starts filing all these things against them and saying all these horrible things, and then the managers don't back them. I don't go into that stuff. And the reason why is because I'm waiting for Social Security recipient or Social Security employees to come out of the SSA and start sharing their stories and explain essentially what was not good for them at the SSA, because it is only that embarrassment on the management of the SSA that is going to force changes at the SSA to make it a place that people want to work for again. And so Star Fury, I totally get it. I totally agree. If you want to go ahead and give your story, I'm totally open to it. But it is that embarrassment that is going to force the Social Security to change their methods and ways of employing people. And only through that is going to save the Social Security Administration with getting future people to work for it. Because look, if people don't want to work for the SSA, you're not going to get talented people to work there. And if you can't get talented people to work there, well, it's a program that handles the most output of money per year in America. You're going to need talented people, no matter, even if you make the argument that the Social Security system is a hyper automated system, including their monetary output is hyper automated. Even if you're one of those people that's like, oh, nothing can go wrong, they don't need that many people, it's all hyper automated. Yeah, sure. Just keep in mind, like, there still needs to be somebody reading the 4,000 pages of medical documents to figure out whether or not this person should be found disabled. Most of the viewers watching this have never read 4,000 pages of somebody's medical record. A good chunk of them couldn't do it even if they wanted to. They wouldn't comprehend it too because they're not trained in that, All right, here we go. So Cardozo made that heavy use of it. The court therefore decided that old age benefits, retirement benefits, were valid, constitutional, that they wanted to spend money and force companies to spend money on Social Security benefits. The court, reflecting upon the crisis, which fundamentally changed society, openly considered in both these cases how the Great Depression may well have changed the Constitution and the power of Congress to spend to aid the general welfare of the American people. More recent cases have made it clear the extent of Congress's spending powers in the 1987 case of South Dakota versus Dole. It's a good one. Not as good as the earlier 1937, but it's a good one. The court decided that so long as Congress did not impose unconstitutional or coercive conditions and the spending promoted the general welfare, Congress could attach reasonable and unambiguous conditions to funding given to states as part of a national program. In the Obamacare case, NFIB versus Sebelius, in 2012, Chief Justice John G. Roberts, you guys know who he is, obviously, found that Congress may offer the states grants and require the states to comply with the accompanying conditions. There must be a genuine choice whether to accept the offer. Okay. I need you guys to understand that the federal government has a problem. And the problem is that it has lost its way politically with what it's going to do with this massive dragon worth of employees known as the United States federal government. Let me read something to you real quick. Let me give you some of this. This is really good, okay? This is really good stuff. This is Franklin Roosevelt's 32nd president of the United States, his statement on signing the Social Security Act, August 14th, 1935. I want you to compare this to Biden, and I want you to compare this to Trump, our two most recent presidents. Okay. I want you to compare this. So just think about how Biden talked about it, how Trump talked about it, versus the man who signed the plan, 1935, August 14th, specifically Franklin D. Roosevelt. Here we go. Today, a hope of many years standing is in large part fulfilled. The civilization of the past 100 years, with its startling industrial changes, has tended more and more to make life insecure. Young people have come to wonder what would be their lot when they came to old age. The man with a job has wondered how long the job would last. This Social Security measure gives at least some protection to 30 million of our citizens who will reap direct benefits through unemployment compensation, through old age pensions, and through increased services for the protection of children and the prevention of ill health. Okay. Although remember, traditional SSDI benefits, traditional disability wasn't passed until the 50s and then SSI the 70s. Okay. We can never ensure 100%. This is my favorite paragraph because it tells you where his brain was at and how he was hedging, like what the program was going to be able to do. So this one right here is really important. Okay. We can never ensure 100% of the population against 100% of the hazards, and you're not going to know what that word is, issues of life. But we have tried to frame a law which will give some measure of protection to the average citizen and to his family against the loss of a job and against poverty-ridden old age. That right there was the introduction to the federal government saying, if you have a savings, and you have a pension, and you have a retirement pension through the federal government, you should be okay. But there's no way for us, the federal government, to be able to insure you against other problems that might occur. Like pensions disappearing, student loans being horrific, No savings, no bonds, no stocks. You're just in a shit-shaped situation. This law, too, represents a cornerstone in a structure which is being built but is by no means complete. It is a structure intended to lessen the force of possible future depressions. It will act as a protection to future administrations against the necessity of going deeply into debt to furnish relief to the needy. The law will flatten out the peaks and the valleys of deflation and of inflation. It is, in short, a law that will take care of human needs and at the same time provide for the United States an economic structure of vastly greater soundness. So then you're probably wondering, what happened in 2008? What happened with COVID? You're probably wondering that, right? I congratulate all of you, ladies and gentlemen, all of you in Congress, and the executive departments, and all of you who come from private life. And I thank you for your splendid efforts on behalf of this sound, needed, and patriotic legislation. If the Senate and the House of Representatives in this long and arduous session had done nothing more than pass this bill, the session would be regarded as historic for all time. It's incredible. Because imagine going back in time. Just imagine for a moment. You go back in time, right? And what happens is this. You have basically super rich people not wanting to pay taxes, making a lot of money in this new world. Oil tycoons, land tycoons, tree tycoons, lumber tycoons, all that stuff. And what happens is the government says to these rich people, hey, rich people, you're going to have to subsidize the old, the disabled, the impoverished. You're going to have to subsidize them so that we don't have another Great Depression. And the rich are sitting there going like, not going to happen. Unconstitutional. Then, 1937, the light switch happens. Constitution is backed by the Supreme Court, and they say, you know what, rich people, you go after yourself. You're going to have to subsidize all these people. That's what happened. That's what happened. And then the government continued to grow and grew and grow. And then it grew some more, and then it grew some more until we got to the Biden era, which is where, what was it, a quarter of the new jobs that were happening in America were federal government jobs. The federal government was never meant to be that big. It wasn't meant to be half that big. It just wasn't. It is weird that the IRS from Biden got, what was it, like almost 90,000 something plus new employees. Social Security Administration wasn't allowed to hire more people the next year. They were literally starved out by the Democrats. And you know who allowed that? The Republicans. Because they have a consensual, bilateral, express, contractual agreement. They are the same party when it comes to Social Security benefits, even though they bullshit you from the left and the right that they're trying to fix it. They're not. They're not. They're just not. All right, we've gone through a lot, and I think you guys understand essentially what's going on with this situation. But at the end of the day, you have to understand that what's happening with the Social Security Administration now breaks the traditional president by president handoff of Social Security benefits. Harry Bear, thank you for the $5 donation. That's absolutely amazing. Harry Bear said, working on a Sunday again. Wish I knew about you 2 years ago. Lol, thanks again. I super appreciate it, good sir. Pretty much every day I work, pretty much every day. And which is, again, why I don't have a healthy relationship with Social Security, because I've gotten to the point where I have dreams about being in 1937 when that Supreme Court decision was made. I was thinking about like what people were doing and what the different politicians were doing and what the different, appellate justices were doing, the Supreme Court justices, how the people were reacting to it, what the billionaires were thinking, which, obviously back then they were more so millionaires, although realistically they were quasi-billionaires. I mean, people in the future will be talking about trillionaires. You know what I mean? It's just the way it is. But bottom line is this. My belief when it comes to this situation, if Trump can pull it off, which I don't think he can, I really don't. I want him to. I really hope he does. I really hope he finally makes a magical, because remember, what was it? 2 years ago, I made a video and I was like, you guys got to understand, if somebody gets hired by the federal government, they can screw up, they can scream at somebody, they can do things that are very wrong. Things that are very, very wrong that we would see as like a tort, light criminal act, a misdemeanor, and they wouldn't get fired. Now it's the opposite. Now your job is not safe. Now it's more like the private industry. Except, of course, they're still funding it. Like, that was the other thing. That was an interesting thing too. When I was audited, right? Basically they were like, okay, well, why didn't you pay yourself as much this month, or why didn't you pay yourself anything that month? And it's like, when you talk to these government workers, these government employees, like, it doesn't blink into their head that if the money isn't there, the money isn't there. In my field of law, you don't make that much money because you don't get paid that much per claim. And it takes, for the bigger payouts, right? For most of the claimants I work with, the low income and the homeless, you got to represent them for a while to get the max fee. And then even then, the judge might cut off a bunch of the back pay and retroactive benefits because, there's abuse in there, and every time they picked up a can and went to the hospital and they got a high number, they're going to cut off those benefits from that point going, backwards in time for retroactive and back pay money. So the thing is this, I really believe we are within the next 6 months going to know whether or not Social Security benefits in the future are essentially something that will either survive with the youth voting for it and wanting it, or will have some major changes occur to it. Do I believe the Republicans are trying to privatize Social Security? Yes. I believe they're trying to swing the pendulum against Cardozo from the 1937 Supreme Court ruling, against the middle class and the upper class paying for the poor and the low income individuals, like the homeless, right? I think that they're trying to swing us away from so many middle class paying so much and getting so little. Do I think that they'll be successful with that? Who knows? We're all in the same ship. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Okay. With that said, if this video taught you stuff, if you learned something new, that is amazing, and that was the purpose of it. Please remember, please consider, okay, liking, subscribing, becoming a member. Also, head over to Google, type in Disability Resolution Law Firm or Disability Resolution Florida. If you want to throw some stars up there, I super appreciate it. Please remember that before you comment and say, oh, this guy's obviously a Trumper, or this guy's licking Biden's boots or something like that, please remember that I go after both parties, because at this point, I don't trust either side. You know what I mean? Like, if you watch both sides, you're going to see the weakness points of the other side and the other side. And, you're going to see where there's, no side is an angel. No side is a holy group. You're going to see it more. With that said, I go live on Mondays and also Thursdays to go ahead and answer questions for free for the disabled community. And then if you have a really tough question that requires more than 5 to 7 minutes of me answering something quickly, there's a mini contract below for a private session. I'll catch you a little bit later. You have an absolutely amazing weekend. I will be back in about 15 to 20 minutes to do a status update specifically on what will be called the DOGE, stimulus check, and how essentially that'll affect Social Security recipients, who's going to be able to potentially receive one, and who will de facto absolutely not be able to receive it because it violates some of the programs they would be on for Social Security benefits. All right. I'll catch you in about 15 to 20 minutes. We'll go from there. Attorney Walter Hnot, I hope all is well, and I will see you in the next video. I still have to upload the thumbnail and the video, so I'll see you in about 15 minutes. Thank you so much, Attorney Walter Hnot, and we'll go from there.